Welcome to the Crazy Alchemist podcast, where alchemy, occultism, and strange history come alive.
On the night of the 20th of October, 1966, a girl in the Welsh mining village of Aberfan told her mother about a dream. Her name was Errol Mai Jones. She was 10 years old. In the dream, she had gone to school, and the school was not there. Something black, she said, had come down all over it. The next morning, she went to Pontglas Junior School as usual. A little after 9 o'clock, a waterlogged tip of colliery waste, 500,000 tons of it, slid down the mountain and buried the school. 144 people died. 116 of them were children. Errol Mai was one of them. Stories like that are the reason the word prophecy still has a pull, and almost all of them fall apart the moment you look. The prophecy turns out to be vague enough to fit anything, or it was written down after the event and dressed up as foresight. A good number were simply invented. The internet is full of predictions Nostradamus never made, and forecasts that Baba Vanga's own neighbors say she never gave. That material is worth taking apart on its own, and we will, another day. This is about the other kind, the small number of cases where someone recorded a specific prediction in front of a witness before the thing happened, and where the easy explanations have to work harder than usual to close the gap. We are here to measure them, not to marvel at them. Start with the ruler. The useful thing about the Society for Psychical Research, the Victorian body that first tried to study this seriously, is that it kept arguing with itself about what would count as proof. In 1965, one of its former council members, a man named G.W. Lambert, wrote the argument down as a list. For a dream of the future to be worth anything as evidence, he said, it had to pass 5 tests. It had to be told to a credible witness before the event, not after. Little time could pass between the dream and the event. Nothing about the event could be expected at the time of the dream. The dream had to describe something literal, a thing that happened the way it was dreamed, not a symbol read onto events afterward. And the details had to match. Keep that list in your hand for the rest of this, because it does most of the work. Run the famous prophecies through it, and they drop out at the first hurdle, the one about being told beforehand. What survives Lambert's filter is a much shorter and much stranger list. Before Aberfan, before any of this had a name, the Society tried to build an archive. In 1886, 3 of its members, Edmund Gurney, Frederick Myers, and Frank Podmore, published 2 heavy volumes called Phantasms of the Living. Inside were 701 cases, most of them the same shape. A person sees or dreams something about a distant friend or relative, and at that hour, the friend is dying or in danger. The book was meant to be a mountain of testimony too large to wave away. A Scottish lawyer named Alexander Taylor Innes waved it away in a single essay. His question was narrow, and it was lethal. He called it, "Where are the letters?" If someone dreams of a death and then, before the news could possibly reach them, writes it in a diary or posts a letter to a friend, that document would be real evidence. It would be dated by the event itself. The book claimed such documents existed. Innes asked to see them, and he pointed out that in case after case, there was no sign the investigators had ever held the letter in their hands. Gurney gave the real count, and it cost him. Out of 701 cases, he could name 3 that met Innes's standard, 3 with a genuine document written before the outcome was known, and one of those 3 later turned out to be a fraud. This is worth sitting with. The Society did not bury the man who broke its archive. It printed Innes's attack and Gurney's reply in the same public journal and let readers watch the flagship archive of Victorian psychical research, the 701, come down under pressure to 2. And stranger still, even those 2 are hard to find today. Dig through the record and you can put a name to one of them. A woman the book calls Mrs. L.G.T., living near Adelaide in Australia, wrote 2 words in her diary on the 18th of November, 1863. 2 figures. That was the night she saw, standing in her bedroom doorway, a former suitor dressed in mourning. The date matched, weeks before any letter or obituary could have reached her, the day his father had died. The best evidence the age could produce comes down to 2 diary entries, one of which the modern reader can barely locate. That is the floor of the whole subject. Whatever is real here is small and hard to hold. Keep that in view while we look at the cases that seem, at first, bigger. So go back to Errol Mai Jones and run her against Lambert's list. Her mother heard the dream the night before, so it reached a witness in time, and the interval was only hours. No one expected the tip to move. A school buried under something black is close to what happened, black slurry over the building, and the details match closely. It is the best single case of the disaster. And it is still not quite what it first looks like. The account we quote, the one about the school not being there, was written down after the disaster and signed by her parents, with the local minister attesting to it. That gives us sworn testimony that the child had spoken the day before. It does not give us a note dated the night of the 20th. The corroboration rests on a memory of the timing, sworn to by grieving parents, rather than a document that beats the event to the page. And under Innes's rule, that's exactly the gap that sank the 701.
Around Errol Mai, the picture gets weaker fast. After the disaster, a psychiatrist named John Barker, helped by a London newspaper, asked the public to send in any premonitions they had felt. About 76 people wrote back. Barker judged that 22 of them had told someone about their feeling before the tip fell. Only a handful of those had any independent witness to the timing at all. The rest were what he himself admitted they were: memories reshaped by a national tragedy, worth little as evidence because they were created after the fact. But Barker did something clever with what he had. He turned Aberfan into an experiment. He and a journalist set up a Premonitions bureau where the public could file their forebodings in advance, time-stamped, so that a real signal could be caught before the event instead of reconstructed after it. In 18 months, the bureau collected close to 1,000 reports. It recorded 18 of them as hits. It prevented nothing. And 12 of those 18 hits came from the same 2 people. Those 2 are the next problem, because for a moment they look like the strongest cases of all. One was a switchboard operator named Alan Hensher. In 1967, he told the Bureau that a plane would come down, and he gave a number, a crash involving 123 people. 9 days later, an airliner came down on approach to Nicosia in Cyprus, and 124 people died on impact, off by 1. It is the kind of detail that stops you, and it was time-stamped by the Bureau before the crash, which is more than Aberfan can say. The other was a music teacher named Kathleen Middleton. In March of 1968, she sent the Bureau a written warning about Senator Robert Kennedy. On the 4th of June, she telephoned them 3 times, agitated, about him. That night, in Los Angeles, Kennedy was shot. He died the next day. Both cases passed tests that Errol Mai's cannot. They were logged with a date before the event. On the face of it, that looks like proof. It is not, and the reason is a third report from that same Kathleen Middleton. She once wrote to the Bureau describing a vision of a petrified astronaut. It felt to her like a warning of a disaster to come. But the cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov had already been killed that day when his capsule crashed, and the news of it had not yet been released. Her vision was running behind the event, not ahead of it. That is a different and much smaller claim. On Lambert's list, it fails the very first test. There was no future left to see. Hold Hensher and Middleton together and the shape comes clear. Neither was an ordinary person with one uncanny hit. Both were the Bureau's most prolific correspondents, filing warning after warning, most of which came to nothing. Between them, they produced 12 of the 18 recorded hits and a far larger pile of misses. A person who predicts disaster constantly will, sooner or later, predict one that happens, and the ones that don't happen do not get quoted. The timestamp is genuine, so is the volume of misses behind it. Now, all of that was private. Dreams, phone calls, a warning slip in a filing cabinet. The cleanest pre-registration of them all was a public dare. Through the summer of 1917, 3 shepherd children near the Portuguese village of Fatima said that a lady had appeared to them and had promised a sign. They named the terms in advance, a miracle at a place called the Cova da Iria at noon on the 13th of October, a time and a place printed and talked about for months. On the day, a crowd came to hold them to it. The estimates run from 30,000 to 70,000 people, many of whom had walked through rain to watch a prophecy be tested at a fixed time. And the crowd reported that the sun moved, that it spun and changed color, and then seemed to plunge toward the earth before pulling back. The weight of that report comes from the man who filed it. His name was Avelino de Almeida, and he was writing for O Século, the main Lisbon daily, a liberal Republican paper that was openly hostile to the church. He had no reason on earth to hand the church a miracle, and he described the sun before the astonished crowd anyway. So the pre-registration is real, and it is unusual. The catch is in what exactly was pre-registered. The children promised a miracle. They did not promise that the sun would appear to dance. The prediction fixed the time and left the content wide open. And an open promise like that is satisfied by whatever unusual thing a keyed-up crowd staring at the sky after rain happens to see. The weak point is the staring itself. Look at the sun for long enough and you get this whole family of effects: afterimages, apparent motion, colors shifting as the retina tires. A physicist named Auguste Meeson argued that the entire account can be built out of optics and expectation, and the reports vary the way subjective effects do. The colors and the directions differed from person to person, and some in the crowd saw nothing at all. 2 things keep that optical account from closing all the way. Some witnesses said they saw the sun from villages miles away from the cova, people who were not packed into a suggestible crowd and had not been told where to look. And there's the timing. The sun breaking through the clouds just as the long-promised hour arrived is either a genuine coincidence or it is something the explanation has to leave a little loose. The date was called in advance. What answered it stays at the edges unaccounted for. Set against the cases that hold up are the ones that feel the strongest and are in fact the weakest, and they are worth keeping because each one teaches a rule.
In January of 1788, at a dinner in Paris, the writer Jacques Cazant is said to have gone around the table and told each guest exactly how the coming revolution would kill them. This one by poison in his cell, that one by the guillotine. Every detail correct. The story is unbeatable, until you check who wrote it. It comes from the papers of a man named La Harpe, published around 1806, after the revolution had already killed everyone in the room, in the ways the story describes, and that perfection is the giveaway. A real premonition tends to be vague. A memory of one comes out sharp in specific, because the writer already knows all the answers. Abraham Lincoln, the story goes, dreamed of a corpse lying in state in the White House and was told it was the president, killed by an assassin, days before Booth shot him. The dream may well have been real, but the only source for it is his friend Ward Hill Lamon, who set it down in a book published in 1895, 30 years after the fact, with no contemporary record and some internal details that do not quite fit. It reaches us as a memory of a memory, long after the event it is supposed to predict. And the astrologer Luca Galrico is remembered for warning Henry II of France to avoid single combat before Henry died in 1559 of a lance splinter driven through his eye in a joust. The warning that actually survives in Galrico's own published work, printed in 1552, says only that the king faced danger to the head sometime around his early 40s. The specific instruction about avoiding a duel was added later, glued on to the death after it happened, the same way a Nostradamus quatrain gets sharpened. A dated document warned of vague danger, gave it a point once the danger had a shape. The rule those 3 share is the one Innes used to break the 701. Before you ask whether a prophecy came true, find out when it was written down. There is also a mathematical reason so few of these cases survive, and it is no dismissal, it is just the size of the world. The mathematician J.E. Littlewood put it as a joke told with a straight face. Call a miracle any event with a 1 in a million chance of happening. In the hours we are awake and paying attention, things happen to us at a rate of about 1 a second. That comes to something over 1 million events a month, so each of us should expect a 1 in a million coincidence about once a month, from nothing more than being alive. Two statisticians, Percy Diaconis and Frederick Mosteller, made the same point more rigorously in 1889. With a large enough sample, they wrote, any outrageous thing is likely to happen. A 1 in a million event across a country of hundreds of millions of people is expected many times a day. Now put premonitions inside that. 8 billion people dream every night, and dreams of death or of a child in danger are among the commonest dreams there are. After any large disaster, the numbers all but require that a few people recently dreamed something close to it and told someone. The Premonitions Bureau is the experiment that shows it. Ask a whole nation for its forebodings, and hundreds arrive. Run it forward as an alarm system, it catches nothing and saves no one. The base rate produces the hits on its own. What it does not produce in 18 months of trying is one prevented death. There is a cleaner test still, and it has been run. In 2011, a psychologist named Daryl Bem published experiments that appeared to show precognition under laboratory conditions. Other researchers did the obvious thing and tried to repeat them. The main replication, in 2012, by Stuart Ritchie, Richard Wiseman, and Christopher French, found nothing. Put in a form where the prediction has to be registered before the result and checked by strangers, the effect simply did not survive. That is the strongest single fact on record, and most of the evidence runs the same way. So the explanation closes over most of the field, but not all of it. Two places hold out, and they are worth naming rather than sewing shut. The first is the corroborated tale of Aberfan. Strip away the 70-odd reports gathered after the fact, and you're left with a small number told to a witness beforehand, Errol Mize among them. The mathematics of coincidence covers them well, but only statistically is a statement about the whole pile. It is not a solution to the single case of a 10-year-old describing black coming down over her school the night before it did. The other is that handful of Fatima witnesses who reported the sun from miles away, outside the crowd, with the fit of the timing to a date set months earlier. The optical account handles most of it, reaches the edges of those two things, and stops. Neither of these seams proves anything. A statistical explanation that fits 10,000 cases does not have to solve the one that unsettles you, and the fact that it doesn't is not evidence of the marvelous. This is the discipline the whole subject asks for and rarely gets. To hold a dated, specific prediction in one hand and the best rational account of it in the other, and to say where that account is complete and where it runs out, without deciding the question in either direction, just because the not knowing is uncomfortable. The Victorians, for all their fraud and all their credulity, built the right instrument, and then they reported what it found. 701 cases, and under real pressure, 2. One of the two is a woman near Adelaide who on a November night of 1863 wrote 2 words in her diary and nothing else. 2 figures. It settles nothing. It has also never quite been explained.
If you enjoyed this, the full article is on the site at crazyalchemist.com, with the bibliography and the source documents listed for anyone who wants to read further. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts for more on the history of esotericism and the dark corners of belief. Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to visit crazyalchemist.com for more intriguing content and follow Crazy Alchemist on Instagram and Facebook to stay connected.